Welcome back to another edition of More to Live For. Peace and blessings to all my subscribers, all my viewers, man. I appreciate all the support from state to state. I really do, man. Hope everybody's having a good one, man. Got a real special project for you. Real special one, man. Over here at More to Live For, man, we really, I do a lot of different projects on a lot of different things, man. And it's more so to focus on, the fact that we may have all these differences, and this just not with this particular project, but just in a nutshell of what I do on this channel. We may have a lot of differences, but I try not to focus on that. I try to focus on the things that we have in common, and then in the midst of focusing on those things, I land on we all have more to live for. So welcome to the channel. Hope everybody having a good one, man. If you are already subscribed, man, make sure you hit that notification bell so you get this good content every time I drop it. So like I said, man, hope everybody having a good one. So we can get right into this good one, man. I got a special one. Got a good brother here with me, man. I'm gonna let him introduce himself, and we're gonna kick it off just like that. How you doing, bro?
I'm doing good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. Sorry for the long intro, man. Sorry about
Oh
that.
no. Hey, you're good. Take your time.
Oh yeah, definitely, man, definitely. So if you could, man, for my viewers, I'm me personally, I'm here in Eastern North Carolina, and most of my viewers are kind of in this area from what I've seen. So if you could you kind of tell us how you grew up and where you grew up?
Yeah. I grew up in a military family. Um Moved around a lot. Lived on military bases like most of my life as a child. Um Moved I was born in Arizona, but we moved around, and then later on my mom and my stepdad had gotten a divorce. He was one in the military, so we ended up going back to Arizona where I was born, and that was in 2000. So I had been there ever since.
Oh, okay, all
Yeah.
right. So like I said, man, I'm way over here in North Carolina, man. So how was it growing up in Arizona, man? From my understanding, like when I think of Arizona, I mean, I really think about just keep it all the way real. I'm thinking about a cactus and some spiders, man, when I think about
Yep.
Arizona. So
Hey, that's what a lot of people think too, but I think we're like the Phoenix is like the third or fourth biggest city in the United States.
right.
A little over 3 million people. Now, don't get me wrong. Uh, Everybody, they have palm trees and cactuses in their front yard. You know
Right.
what I mean? So that is the thing, but it's very rural in most areas. You know what I mean? So you do have a lot of your country, but most people don't really live out there. You have your outside towns like Buckeye. That's more like real country. It's a real small town. It's been growing a lot, but um, I grew up in the city, so I grew up around. My background was a little bit different. You know what I mean, than other people that live in the country part of Arizona type thing.
Okay. So perfect, man. So how was it, man? Like I'm glad that you said that, man. Because here in this area, man, it is like a lot of country part, and it's a lot of city part. But the crazy thing here, and I'm pretty sure this like it's like this everywhere, man. The country part really has a lot of city stuff going on. It's just way out in the country. So
Yeah.
that's just here. So how was it like, inner city Arizona, man? Like in what particular part?
So I went to Tolleson High School, which is it's still considered part of Maricopa County, which is Phoenix, but we have like different sub cities, but they're all in the same county. So you have Phoenix, Glendale, Avondale, Peoria, etc., Mesa, shit like stuff like that. So um, it's it's all real close together. I can hop on a bus and go to be 30 minutes across in Phoenix, but it takes me about 30 minutes on a bus just to get there. So everything's really close and connected to each other. You know what I mean? Like from the actual Phoenix. Tollison's about 15, 20 minutes away on the freeway.
Okay. All right. So how was the the inner city experience, being that, like you that close to like a major city, and then, from my understanding, all these towns on the West Coast, like big or small, like you're nowhere from Vegas, you're nowhere from LA, you know what I mean? So like
Right.
and I'm pretty sure that played a major part in like other parts of your life, and people that in general, things like that.
Yeah.
So the inner city experience, how was that for you? Being, with your being that you're a military, like the term we use here is military brat or whatever. Like people
Yep.
who moved around in the military. I know a little bit about that myself, so
Oh,
I'll
okay.
let you go.
Yeah, man. I'll be honest. It was. I'm glad the way that I grew up. Uh, you know, I didn't grow up with like racism in my household. Um, we didn't grow up like that, and then especially being on military bases, uh, you have walks of different life from everywhere. You know what I
Right.
mean? So the reason why I said that is because moving to Arizona, it is known for having its racial tendencies and stuff. So it was a little bit different. When I went to high school, um, you know, the blacks and the Mexicans would have riots in our high school. You know what I mean? So it was one of those things. So I didn't really grow up with uh a lot of that. So it was kind of like a culture shock in a way because I wasn't introduced to that type of stuff. You know what I mean? So it was a little bit different. Um, Certain things, you get used to. Uh, but with that being said, um, I don't know. I don't know. I just kind of I growing up that way was different. You know what I mean? And like we'll get into that later with the prison stuff. So you know that led to certain things happening when I went into prison as well. I don't know if that did that answer your question or.
Yeah, it did. It did. It did. And you kind of led me to something else I kind of wanted to touch on. The
Mhm.
fact that, like, when you mentioned not being exposed to that much racism or whatever, like, me personally and a lot of people over here on the East Coast, like the whole the the whole tension between blacks and browns, like
Mhm.
that's just something that over here on the East Coast that we just like have a hard time like wrapping our mind around that, like, because it seemed like over here, like, what I mean, we kind of fighting like the same fight, you know what I mean?
Right.
So like, so just hearing you say that, like, that's the type of things that was going on, like, most of the information that I hear referring to like black and brown violence and stuff like that, what I mean, it's usually referring to like somebody's prison experience in a western state or whatever. So to hear
Yeah.
you say that you've seen something like that, like in the free world, like that's just that just goes to show like how serious that tension was then and still is now. So
Yeah.
so you definitely kind of led into something I definitely want to further talk about. So I definitely heard you mention that that you went to prison or whatever. So at what age did you start turn, not necessarily say turn to a life of crime, but like basically like in West Coast terms, like jumped all the way off the porch.
Right. Um. So I didn't like. So I got into a lot of trouble as a younger youth, but my trouble was different. At first, like growing up on military bases, we were out in the woods making bombs and like experimenting with crazy stuff like that. And it wasn't playing with I burned down 3 acres of military base when I was like 10. So my trouble was a little bit different.
Right.
Uh, I didn't start getting into like I guess like city like regular city type trouble until I was about uh 18 because I played sports my whole life.
Okay.
So I didn't drink. I didn't smoke weed until pretty much the end of my 17th year. I quit playing sports. I got introduced to smoking weed and, drinking and partying and stuff. And so once I got introduced to that, one of my best friends at that time, he was selling weed, and I rode around with him one day, and we I saw him. Back then in 2004, to make $150 isn't really a lot, but
Right.
for me, to watch him make that, because even though growing up on a military base, we didn't have money. You know what I mean? We got one pair of $20 shoes for the whole year, or we could get two pairs of $10 Payless shoes for the whole year. It was up to us. We didn't have big Christmases. We didn't get a lot of stuff like that. Part of it too was financial. My stepdad had bad financial problems. He didn't know he spent too much money all the time. So we were always living, paycheck to paycheck to paycheck. And so once I experienced that my boy just made 150, 180 bucks in 4 or 5 hours, I was like, I was turned on by that at that point, like
Right.
instantly.
Yeah.
I think 3 months later, I had got my own, quarter pound. And from there, it just progressed. Within 6 months, 8 months, I was, selling coke. I had tried meth, you know, once or twice, didn't really like it, wasn't really my thing at that time.
Right.
Um, then I got married. So I didn't get in trouble yet, but I was already, running at that point. Like I had been you meet a lot of different people at that. We had this one dude named Shy that would come, and this is when I started selling coke, and he would come, and I don't know if you want me to say stuff like that. Do you
You
want me to
good,
use a
bro?
different word?
Bro, do you, bro?
Okay. Um, and he was from Chicago. We called him Shy, and he would come, and the first time I ever even bought a pistol, maybe I was about 19, and he came and I traded him a couple ounces of coke, and he brought these two big old duffel bags just full of pistols and shotguns and stuff, and I got to pick out a bunch. And after that, that was when I got hooked on guns and drugs. I was already hooked on the drug, like selling the drugs, getting the money. Then it came to my love with firearms. So then I started rolling around with pistols all the time, getting in, doing our thing. We were doing, robberies and, stuff like that, breaking into houses, you know, doing stuff like that. And I eventually ended up getting married. I had my son, and I had stayed out of trouble for, I had stopped doing anything like that at around 21. And then after the divorce, I went right back to it, but I went even harder. I started, selling ecstasy pills, coke. I started, you know, dabbling with certain other, different drugs and stuff like that. And then eventually it just got worse and worse. You know what I mean? It went from selling this to selling heroin and meth and stuff like that. That was, those were the two biggest things at that time. I didn't actually catch my first charge until I was 27. And that was when everything just really, really went downhill.
All right, all right. I definitely wanna back up a little bit, man.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely appreciate everything that you shared, man. I really do. So at this particular time, man, like you said, man, you being that you already exposed to a certain lifestyle, man, like and you're intrigued by all these things, and they're right at your fingertips. So at this time, man, being that you were already experiencing with certain drugs, like do you think this particular rage that you was on, not necessarily say rage, I'm not pretty sure that's the right word to use, but this particular phase of your life, I'm gonna say, do you think this was more fueled by the drug habit, trying to make sure that you always in the mix of having drugs, or just like the lifestyle in general? Because you did mention, I just want to be correct, during this whole phase, like you did get married and divorced in this phase. So like I'm just trying to connect the pieces.
Yeah. So to answer that first part, to be honest, I didn't really like. I would, do some coke here and there, or but I wasn't into doing drugs necessarily like that. Like I would do a lot of X and stuff like that. Um, but I wasn't selling drugs so that I could fuel a drug habit. You know, that didn't start till later. I was selling drugs because I wanted the money. You know what I mean? I wanted, it, drugs is a big way of making money in most states. But we're next to the border, so we're getting all that everything first before
Yep.
everybody else. Even California, Texas, we're like the three states that are really getting everything. Most of the coke that or whatever that's coming from Mexico and then making it to the East Coast, it's getting stepped on by people in those states first, unless you got somebody coming down with a direct connect, of course. Um, so I didn't really develop a big drug habit until a few years later. I'd say about like 25, 26, and even then I didn't really do heroin super tough, but I started doing it. And then I did start selling it at that time to support a habit,
Right.
but it blew up into more than that. We, there was a point in time where my best friend and I were, selling, nickel and diming a quarter pound of heroin a day. So it got to a point to where it it didn't even have to be about the drug habit anymore because I was selling so much heroin that I had more heroin than anybody could ever do anyways. Um, so I don't know if that really answered it, but I didn't start a drug habit until later on.
It did.
You know
It
what I
did.
mean?
I appreciate you, bro. Like I said, man, I appreciate you for being honest, man. And
Yeah.
like one thing that I definitely believe in, man, is like no matter the situation, man, like I definitely believe nobody is better than nobody. And like I said in the beginning of the video, man, like even though people are different, man, like I focus on the similarities, man. And like, it's a lot of similarities in, the way you grew up and a lot of other people that I know grew up like that. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
like once again, I definitely appreciate you for sharing. So
Yeah.
not to keep cutting you off. So
You're good.
around where I want to take it at right now, around this point in time, I did hear you mention like you like I said, you got a divorce, and if so, I just want to make sure I'm correct. It was after the divorce, like before you started getting into like any legal trouble.
Uh, yeah, like I didn't actually catch any like criminal charges until I was 27. And I think
Okay.
we got divorced around when I was 23.
Okay. All right. All right. So if you could, man, like I really don't want you to if it's more than if it's several parties involved, like really don't want you to implicate, anybody else.
Yeah.
So if you could like go into like the nature of your crime and like, and the sentence that you got, and then we can,
Mhm.
kind of talk about the experiences,
Yeah.
in
Um,
Arizona.
yeah. So it was only me. I got caught up in a hotel. Um, I at this time I had a driver. I paid him a quarter ounce of meth every Friday like a business. He drove me around 6 days a week, 24 hours a day. I paid him $300 cash and a quarter ounce of meth every Friday. That was his payment for me. He was at my disposal for driving. He pretty much stayed with me in my hotel all the
Right.
time. Um, at that time, I was doing really well, I guess you could say, in selling, in the drug game at that point. I was making a lot of money at that point, and some incidents had transpired to where I had my wallet stolen from me. It had like $4,000 in it, and this whole big old thing transpired. I found the person. There was like 16 or 17 of us that showed up. You know what I mean? All of us had, pistols and everything. And I had originally, so after that whole incident was taken care of, I was actually sitting on this curb, and I was waiting for a ride to come. This is probably like an hour later. We had all taken off after we handled everything, and the ghetto bird was flying around, and so I had taken off, and I was waiting for my driver to come pick me up. I hadn't gotten the money. I didn't get the money back because she had spent all of it. But I got the Mac laptop that she had bought, which was like $2,500. So with the receipt and all that. So I had gotten it back in possessions, but not actual, the money.
Right.
And I had two pistols on me. I had a snub nose 357 Smith and Wesson. It was a special 7-round shot, special edition 7-round shot, titanium. And then I had a Glock 40 on me. And in my pockets, I had 4 boxes of ammo, and all of them were hollow tips. We're allowed to have that type of stuff in Arizona. It's a cowboy state.
Right.
Well, 2 cops pulled up on me while I was sitting on the curb, and they got out. They started asking me questions. I told them, hey, look, I have pistols on me, because in Phoenix they'll shoot you. You know what I mean? If they feel that they're in danger in any way, they shoot first, ask questions last.
Right.
And so I had gave them a heads up, let them know. So they took all my stuff from me. They kept the 357. They said it was stolen, which I know it wasn't, because I know who I got it from. I think that the sergeant who took it at that time, he just wanted it because it was a pretty rare gun.
Right.
And they ended up letting me go because I didn't have any. I wasn't a felon yet, so I didn't have any drugs on me. I had nothing, that they could really hold me on. But the only reason why later on they mistaken me for somebody else. They said that I fit the description of another white male, and that had the police called on him just prior to that. Well, they let me go. I had already been up for like 3 days. I went back to my hotel. I was waiting to re-up. So the next day, it didn't happen right away because it was already too late at that time. The prices that I went through, they stopped doing business at a certain time.
Right.
So it was already past that time. And with that being, the reason why I led into all that is because she had stolen my wallet, which had my ID, everything. Now I had another like $3,000 in my safe. That was just the $4,000 I had was just in my wallet. And so I was able to get another hotel, but the problem was I didn't have an ID. So my driver, I didn't know this whole time. He'd been riding around with me for about 4 or 5 months. I didn't know at that time that he was on probation. So when we went to a hotel right off the freeway, and in Arizona they do hotel checks. So what they'll do is they'll stop at a hotel that's off the freeway, and they'll run the names to see if anybody has warrants and probation checks. Well, they had done that and ran, and obviously, his name popped up. And so this is the next day. We found a hotel, Red Roof Inn, and I'm sitting in the hotel. He went down to go and get some food out of the vending machine. When he went to go get food out of the vending machine, I had given him some money to get us both some food because I was about to pass out. I had like an hour maybe before my paisa was going to be there.
Right.
And thank God that he didn't come, because it would have been a whole different situation. you know, while he was down at the vending machines getting food, I had at that time I had like 9 guns stashed. I had a pistol in the trash can in the bathroom. I had them under my pillow, in between the mattress, behind the TV. Like I was just, I was paranoid about stuff, so I'd always have stuff stashed.
Right.
And all of a sudden, I get this banging on the door, pow, 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 and they're like, "Mr. Christopher, we know you're in there." Well, what had happened was, is he had popped up for being on probation, and you can't be in a hotel without your probation officer's consent if you're on probation. So they were banging on the door. There's like 9 cops and 2 probation officers with them. And, I'm freaking out because luckily I only had, I think I had like 12 grams of meth at that time. I had 9 pounds of spice that I had traded some cluck for at the time for, just a little bit of dope. I had 4 grams left of the heroin. I think I had 192 pills. They said it was one of the biggest smorgasbords of pills because I had perk 30s, 15s, 10s, Klonopins. I had all kinds of stuff. And and I was so messed up. I had been up for so long that instead of flushing what dope I did have, I was worried about making sure that my guns had all the bullets out of them, the clip was out, when really, in all reality, I could have had all those weapons and it wouldn't have mattered. It was, in the long run, it was the dope and all that, and it was only a little bit that I had left. But in all reality, that's what I should have been getting rid of, flushing it down the toilet, etc. But I was so messed up, I wasn't thinking that. Right. So when they came in, they explained what was going on, that he had a probation warrant, and I had all my stuff in a safe. And I had taken my key, and I always would hide my key. And so when they asked me where my key was, I told them I didn't know. Well, at that time, they pulled out this little, looked like a little miniature gun almost, and it had like this little pin sticking out of it. And the sheriff pulled it out of his vest, and he was like, "No worries, we can get it open." He put it in the keyhole of my safe, and he just goes clack, 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 and it just popped open.
Damn.
And so that was how. And so now they didn't need a warrant. I got to explain that, because they didn't need a warrant because the hotel room was in that dude's name, and he was on probation. So technically, everything in there, they can go through.
Perhaps, yeah, because they come in on official business for him.
Exactly. So they didn't need any permission for nothing. They didn't need a warrant. They didn't need any of that. Well, if that had happened an hour later, they would have had a paisa, a cartel paisa in that room with a quarter pound of, heroin and about 2, maybe 3 ounces of meth on top of all of that.
Right.
So I ended up, I told them everything was mine, you know what I mean? And they ended up hitting me with 4 felony 2s or 5 felony 2s for possession of dangerous narcotics for sale. Then they hit me with 2 felony 4s of possession of dangerous weapons with intent to use on an officer. Now, I didn't have any intentions on shooting any cops. They had me in cuffs. When I opened the door, I opened it and I laid on the ground, because I didn't, just didn't want to have any kind of a situation. And then they gave me a possession paraphernalia charge. So they ended up taking me to jail. I'm in this paddy wagon with a whole bunch of people that they were doing around picking up people all day, all morning. And we didn't even go to jail for hours. We rode around with a whole bunch of other dudes while they went to other hotels and finished their rounds until the paddy wagon was full. So then they take us in. I'm thinking I'm like going to prison for a minute. I'm thinking I'm gone for a long time. And in Arizona, it's a plea bargain state.
Right.
So They ended up letting me out on OR, my own recognizance, but they put me on an ankle monitor. I think I was in jail like 36 hours. The judge let me out on the ankle monitor. And with that being said, that didn't slow anything down for me. You would think, that being on an ankle monitor, I would have got, knowing that I'm going to court for some serious stuff later on, because they ended up dropping all those charges except for one. They gave me a possession of dangerous narcotics for sale. So then at that point, I'm now on an ankle monitor.
Right.
I get out. I go to the person that I was with, living with. I went to her place. It was my ex, who's my daughter's mom now, because I have a son and a daughter. And her dad wouldn't let me stay there, of course, because they all knew what I was doing. She knew she didn't use drugs, but I did, and she wasn't involved in any of my sales stuff, So, I ended up staying. This is where it all starts tying in, because there was all kinds of other little things, but I'm trying to give you a good, a gist of some of the crazy shit. And she ends up talking to her friend, who her boyfriend is. I didn't know him at the time, so she ends up talking to her. They let me stay in their spare bedroom at this apartment complex. I find out that he's a heroin addict too. And I'm still getting all my stuff. I'm still getting money. On an ankle monitor, I ended up robbing the dude up above from me while he got taken away by the sheriff's department, by the not sheriff's, the marshals. They came and got him. And I ended up taking $8,000 cash out of his apartment. I crawled through the window with an ankle monitor on. And I couldn't be within 100. I couldn't be away from my monitor for 100 feet. So what I did is I had one chance to unplug, where they would just call me and say, "Hey, how come you're disconnected?" So what I did is I went and bought like 400 or 500 feet in extension cables, like that you cut your lawn and stuff with. I hooked them all together, unplugged it, hooked it up. They called me, asked what happened. I said I tripped over it, it unplugged. So I broke into this dude's apartment carrying a black box with my ankle monitor on and this orange cord going all the way up the stairs.
Right.
And pretty much at any point in time, at 2 or 3 in the morning, if you wanted to know where I was at, you would just go to the apartment I was staying in and follow the orange cord. And it would probably go 150, 200 feet into somebody else's apartment where I'm chilling at.
Right.
So nonetheless, I was still getting high. I was still selling. It wasn't as much as I was before, because literally I had nothing. They took everything from me, all my money. I was just under the laundering charge, which was at that time $10,000. Now it's like $5,000, and it's considered laundering. I had just under like 3,400 or something like that. So I'm trying to get back on deck I'm trying to get back on deck, not really caring about getting in trouble still, because I could leave from 8 o'clock to 8 o'clock. It was just in between those hours, I had to be within 100 feet of my box. But from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., I was free to go wherever I wanted.
Right.
And so that's exactly what I would do. And I was trying to get back into the game with no money until I got that. I ended up getting robbed for the rest of that money 2 days later while I was on my ankle monitor. Got pistol whipped and everything. And I had gotten back on. I had bought a whole bunch of weed and a couple ounces of heroin. And, of course, I was dumb. So I went and bought a bunch of clothes and shit. And I had like $2,500 left, I think. And that was what I ended up getting robbed for later on. So the crazy part is me and that dude that I was living with, it turns out that when I got hemmed up by the cops when I was sitting on the curb, remember I was telling you that earlier?
Yeah.
Well, the apartment that I was staying at with him, that was literally across the street from where I got hemmed up the first time and they let me go. Well, the description was because I didn't even know him. I never knew him. I never knew his lady and I never knew him until I moved in there. Turns out after him and I were talking one night that the description that I got jammed up for was from him beating on his old lady. He had punched her in the mouth and took off. So the description that I was mistaken for turned out to be from him. They had mistaken me for him. Never met this dude, and then I end up living with this same person. So it was a trip how everything kind of comes back in full circle, if you will.
Right.
I don't know if you need to ask anything, but that's where I'm at before I go back to court.
Oh nah, bro. You doing great, man. Building up to it, man. Like I'm trying to give my viewers, man, a clear understanding, man, of the lifestyle, man. And like I said, man, a lot of people live a certain lifestyle, man. But seeing who you are today, man, you definitely, even back then doing those things, man, you knew that you had more to live for. And that's why I wanted you to be a part of this. So keep going, bro. Yeah, if you could, man, tell us how eventually I mean, if you want to go into the whole robbery experience, how that happened, you can. Yeah. But I definitely want to get to how you ultimately ended up in prison.
Okay. I actually didn't end up in prison. I mean, the robbery thing, to make it short for you, I had went to go buy some drugs from another dude, and what had happened is I pulled my money out. I went to go pull just a couple 20s out, but it caught on my pants, the whole wad. It caught on my pants, and $2,500 just fell right in front of him. And I was like, oh, shit. And so I'm picking it all up, and I put it in my pocket, and I pull out what I need to give him. Well, later that night, we get a knock on the door. I'm sitting in the room getting high with that dude that I was staying with.
Right.
And all of a sudden, we hear screaming, and it was his lady and my ex at the time. Because all of a sudden, they kicked in the door, and there was like 4 dudes. 2 years later, so they robbed us. They had everybody in the bathroom. They were cops ended up coming later on because somebody had called the police because they heard screaming. Right. They didn't care about the weed I had. They didn't care about the 2 ounces of heroin that I had. They just wanted the money. So they're tearing it up, looking for everything, and finally they find the money in the freezer. They take that. They take everybody's phones, of course. I came around the corner right before they put everybody in the bathroom and all that. I came around the corner to see what was going on, and I just got hit in the face with a Glock. Blah! And I fell to the ground, and dude's got the pistol pointed at me, and he's like, don't do nothing crazy, you know what I mean? Because I don't know, you can always look at somebody, and kind of know when they're really gonna do something. They have a certain look, like a twinkle in. They don't have that twinkle in their eye anymore. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
So I just let him do his thing. We all went into the bathroom, waited. All of a sudden, 10 minutes go by. They're gone now. We come out of the bathroom and the cops are there. Now, I got an ankle monitor on. The cops didn't. They tore up the house more than the dudes because I was on there for drug sales charges. Right. So they were trying to say that home invasions like that only happen most of the time if you're doing that sort of thing, dealing stuff like that. Plus now I just had these fresh new charges on me. for, you know, for selling dope. And so that was a whole thing. I mean, you know, it took like 18 hours before they let us go. But the crazy part is even though they tore up the whole house, I know they saw the heroin in the closet. They left that shit there.
Right.
They didn't even take it. So I'm like, damn. So I'm out the money, but I'm still up on the dope. Eventually I end up selling about half of it. I did about half of it, sold about half of it. And when I'd say I did about half, it was between me and the homies, you know, here, you know, giving them this, giving them that. So now they end up sentencing me to, you know, fast forward, I never stopped getting high. I never stopped running the streets. I never stopped doing any of that.
Right.
Um, I go to court finally, and they give me 6 months in county flat time.
Right.
This is before I go to prison. So they give me 6 months county time in Maricopa County with the famous Sheriff Joe Arpaio and all that.
Right.
And then 3 years of probation, a 3-year tail. So in that meantime, I grew up, you know, my whole life, you know, getting in, you know, fighting all the time. You know, I was always a very physical kid. You know what I mean? I was always constantly getting in fights with people. So that carried into jail as well. I was always beating people up or, you know, doing stuff. And I end up they give me what's called, what was it called? There's 2 options. One, when you owe child support and you can leave to go to work, and you wear regular clothes. So I was in stripes for about a month, and I'm coming down off of heroin at this time. I'm coming down off of a, you know, 6 to 7 gram habit a day.
Right.
I'm coming down off of that. So I start to get sober. They work release and work furlough is what it's called. Work release, you can be gone for 14 hours a day. Work furlough, I can only be gone for 10 hours, and a probation officer will come check on you where you're working at. Well, I was in the tents with before they picked me to go, I was in the tents with this other dude who was in there, and he owned his own carpentry company. So we ended up becoming real cool. He went over there before I did, but he was on the work release side. He was there for child support. So they don't know that they didn't put 2 and 2 together that because when you're on work furlough, you have to get a job. So with that being said, he let me put all his company info down so that I could come work for him, which I did, but most of the time I wasn't there with him. I was out running around still for my little 10 hours a day.
Right.
You know, getting high, trying to, hustle and make moves, because when I would go back to where I was at, I was still in I'd be in regular clothes. So I would go back and I would buy, 3 or 4 packs of cigarettes. And then I would get like an ounce of spice and I would wrap it up like a football. And before you go to get checked in and they search you, there's usually a quick time. As long as you're doing it right, you'll get a quick time where you can actually throw that package over the fence. Because we would have cash on that regular yard. It's when you go into your stripes that you don't have cash anymore. Everything is, through commissary. So I had my own hustle. There was actually a point in time where I was making so much money in there every day, because I was selling, we call them tailors, and I was selling like one regular cigarette. It's called a tailored, and I was selling one of those for $2. Boom, and I would sell out of that. Boom, and I would roll these little tiny sticks of fake, spice, and I would sell them for $2 or $3 a piece. And so dudes were getting lit. I was gambling all day with cash. We were, just shooting dice all night, just running amok. It was like being in a little tiny organized criminal city.
Right.
And it got to a point to where eventually I only lasted 3 weeks before I got rolled up and sent back to the tents and went to the hole. And then I wasn't allowed to go back there no more. Because I got caught with a smoking heroin and stuff. And they ended up sending me back. And then the dude who told on me, I ran into everybody all the time. So
Right.
the dude who told on me in the tent, when I was going back from work furlough, later on, he ended up becoming my manager at a halfway house. So it was like crazy. The guy who robbed me earlier, I was telling you,
Right.
when I got sent back from the tents, from work furlough back to the hole and then back to the tents where we all live in like big old military tents.
Right.
I ended up getting moved to Towers, which is like a medium custody. And then one of the guys that lived next door to me, him and I ended up becoming good friends. Well, it turns out that he was the driver for the dudes who robbed me that night. And him and I become good friends. And I find this out later, and he's like, dang, he was like, that was you? He was like, bro, look. He's like, it was nothing personal. I didn't even know who you were. All I know is I just drive the homies and I get a cut. And I was like, yeah, no, I get it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just kind of chop it up to the game type thing. And I ended up messing with him out on the streets later on. So now I'm in jail. I'm finishing up my 6 months. I'm in and out of the hole because I'm fighting all the time.
Right.
Beat people up for gambling debts. I started getting drops in jail. So like somebody would wrap stuff up, and then whoever would get, they would go to the food bank to go do their job, and somebody would come donate food. They don't do the food bank no more. So, I can kind of give up game on that because they don't do that no more.
Right.
Somebody would come donate a whole bunch of food, and in that, buried underneath it would be whatever it is you were getting in. So now at that point, those regular cigarettes that I was selling for $2 cash, now it's on the books. So now that one cigarette's costing almost $20 for one. And what dudes would do is they would break that one cigarette down, and roll up little pinners, and then they would sell those for, $5 on the wood, which means, you pay, for people that don't know, that's when you have the items to pay for it right then and there. If we had to front it to you, that was an extra $2, so it'd be $7 for a little tiny. It was probably like that big, nothing. You share it with 2 other people, and you're only getting like 2 puffs off of that thing. So me and my homie started getting drops every couple of days, and people would put all that money on our books. We would get, they would, most of the time people would start buying more, so they would buy, like, we would give them a deal if they bought a whole, because we would get those tailors, and then we would get a pouch of tobacco, which we could roll up probably like 200 little pinners, and then we would get like a half ounce to an ounce of spice. And so we started getting drops in while we're in our stripes now, because now I'm not leaving to go to work no more.
Right.
And I do my 6 months. I get out. I'd been sober in there the whole time after I went back, because it was just too expensive, to get heroin and stuff. There's like a couple times, like, meth came in or something, and we'd be all spun out for like a night or two. But very rarely. We didn't do that very often in there. So now I finished my 6 months. I get out, I'm on probation. I think I lasted a couple of weeks on the street, and then I just started getting high again. Now I'm not selling drugs no more. Now I'm just chasing a high.
Right.
So now it's a full-blown addiction. You know, I would try and get back on deck, but it never really worked out because I would just smoke up or, you know, shoot up all my shit. And I end up going, you know, I'm still, you know, on probation. I'm still pulling licks. We're still robbing people. I'm doing different stuff like that. I go back and forth in and out of jail another 10 or 11 times on probation violations. So before I even go to prison, I had already done almost 16 months in the county jail because I would get arrested and I would have to do 4 months for a probation violation. Or
Right.
one time I did 4 months for fourth degree uh, uh, robbery, but it was another mistaken identity. They thought I was somebody else, but because I was on, and they made me sit in jail for 4 months before they dropped the case because they ended up catching the dude later on who actually was, you know, stealing and shit. But I still had to go do another 2 months because I had police contact while I was on probation.
Damn.
So I'm doing all of this. I don't go to prison until later because I'm in jail on a probation violation. I'm running that pod at that time in the county, and I come back from court. They put me on IPS, which is probation. It's intensive probation service. So now I'm not allowed to just freely leave. Now I have to see my PO every single week. I have to write out my schedule for a whole week. If I'm going to go to this grocery store, I have to put what time and how long I'm going to be there. If I deviate from that path at all, lights out. They call it in prison soon because most people don't last on it. I just get put on that probation. What I go to prison for wasn't even the drug sales charge. I went to prison for aggravated assault because while I was in jail, we were having an issue with a dude who kept stealing. Now, in jail, we call them something different than we do in prison. In jail, we call them torpedoes. There's somebody that you send to go beat people up for you type thing, you know, so that you're not really in the mix. You're staying out of that. You know, you're running the pod. You're just giving out the orders to go do this and that.
Calling the shots.
Yeah. And I had already had this dude beat up 2 different times. So I come back from court. I just got put on IPS. I'm pissed. I'm upset. And they tell me that dude is he got caught he had gotten caught stealing again. So I'm like, man, I'm just gonna go blast this dude in the mouth my damn self since you guys didn't beat him up right the first 2 times.
Right.
So I get that dude, tell him to go into the bathroom. You know, he's dragging his feet. I kick his foot from behind him. I'm like, man, hurry up. You know what I mean? And
Right.
get him into the bathroom. And he walks into the bathroom. So the way the bathrooms were set up is we had four stalls. We had the pissers and we had the shitters. You're only allowed to piss in the pissers and you can't piss in the shitters. I can't tell you how many people I had beat up for that. You know what I mean? Peeing in the, you know. So he gets to the wall, and right when he turns around, I just blast him. Blow! And I knocked his 2 front teeth out. He knocks out cold, hits the wall. He does an accordion type thing, slouches down. I just walk out of the bathroom like nothing happened. Boom. All the guys that were with me, they walk out, you know, behind me. Not all of them. Some of them are trying to pick him up. I go back to sitting at my table, and I go back to playing chess. And, you know, he comes up to me and he's like, "Are you happy now?" And he's like showing me his hand, and his teeth are in his hand. He's like, "Are you happy?" look what you did. Are you happy? And I looked at him and I said, nah, not yet. And wham, I took the teeth right out of his hand and I walked up to the toilet. I went to the toilet and I flushed him down the toilet. So that way he couldn't tell on me for it. Well, he ended up telling anyways. So they pressed charges on me for aggravated assault. But keep in mind, I just gotten on probation. So I get out of jail and I have to still serve another 30 days on top of the 4 months I had just served. But now I'm serving for the probation. That was just for me waiting to go to court. So now I'm waiting my 30 days. They let me out. I don't hear, like, they pulled me in. They took pictures of me, you know, everything. Well, he pointed me out. He was like, no, he was the one that was in charge. He was one that hit me, blah, blah, blah. So they tell me, well, it's just going to be a misdemeanor. I'm like, okay, whatever. That doesn't violate my probation. I'm out of jail. I'm doing good. I'm not getting high at all. I'm not running the streets. I'm not doing anything. I'm staying at home. I'm working at a job. And all of a sudden I get a call from a detective from the Pinal County Sheriff's Department. And he's with the internal jail crimes, whatever they call themselves. And he's like, Mr. Mr. Christopher, blah, blah, blah. He goes, this is going to be a misdemeanor charge. And I'm like, yeah, I already know that. And he was like, okay. And I was like, hey, you know what? I was like, if you need to talk to me, call my probation officer. I don't got nothing, I don't have anything I need to talk to you about. Because she had already known that that was going to come up. Right. So she told me, just tell them to call me and we'll deal with it. Well, they ended up taking that misdemeanor charge and they end up turning it into a felony charge for felony 4 for aggravated assault. Now, what changed was they said, so the judge literally told me at one point in time, he said, Mr. Christopher, if you had just open hand slapped him, it would have just been a misdemeanor. But because you disfigured him in some way, now it gets bumped up. Right. And so they gave me 2 accounts, 1 for each tooth, which was, there was 2. And then they still don't arrest me yet. I'm going to court on intensive probation. Now I'm going to court for this aggravated assault. Then I started getting high again. Start running the streets again. Just, I stopped going to probation. So now I've got a warrant out again. And I go to court. And that was the last court case I had before I didn't go home that time. The judge arrested me, or had the bailiff, arrest me and take me because I had 97 failed UAs. Each UA that you fail, it's not necessarily that you piss dirty, but if I don't show up for a drug test, which I was getting drug tested 3 or 4 times a week,
right?
Each one of those that you miss is considered a dirty test. Mm. So I've got like 97 of them racked up. Takes me in, and I wait the rest of my sentencing, which is another, I want to say 2 or 3 months before I finally was, signed a plea. And because I was tired of doing county jail time, I just wanted to go to prison. And now at this point, I already know I'm going.
Right.
Now I just want to go so I can get better food, better commissary, get a TV, stuff like that.
Right.
So that's when I actually went to prison, was a few months after my last court case. I had already been to like 3 or 4 court cases. 3 or 4 court dates while on that IPS.
All right. So now that you're entering prison, like what was the sentence that you were entering prison with?
They give me 2.5 years with the same probation. Another 3-year tail. That was in 2015. I got sentenced in on January. And that was when I actually got sentenced to DOC, and I actually end up, and then I leave. I think January 21st. I think January 21st. It's been a while. I have to look. Uh, and that's when I ended up actually going to prison. So I got sentenced to 2.5 years with a 3-year tail. I ended up doing 3 years total.
So, not to cut you off at all.
Yeah.
So, my next question, bro, something that I definitely want to know. I think I kind of know the answer. Well, for one, I want to let my viewers know that you do have a upcoming celebrity match coming up. I definitely really don't want to talk too much about that right now, but
Yeah.
in the particular thumbnail that I remember, there we go. The thumbnail that I seen on your IG, it led me, definitely shout out to both of y'all, man. Free C Mac real soon.
Yeah. Shout out to C-Mac.
Definitely, man. Shout out to ODM Slim too as well, man, and the homie Chop, man. They definitely had a lot to do with helping me put this project together. So,
oh, definitely.
So with me seeing this thumbnail, man, the first thing that came to my mind is like, being that you're in Arizona, and this is, for the most part, this is definitely on the West Coast. So like, is Arizona prison politics similar to California? Because like, as I can see right here on this thumbnail, like you got Wood versus Crip, and for people that may not understand what that means, if you could you kind of explain what that means?
Yeah. So a wood is, a lot of people say it's like we'll say it to a lot of white dudes, but it's somebody who's been to prison in Arizona or in California. Some stuff is different in California. Our politics are about 90% the same. We get most of our politics from California. But the woods, the other 10% is Arizona mixed in their own politics, because Arizona prisons are racially segregated.
Right.
You have your white dudes, your black dudes, your Mexican dudes, and your Native Americans. We call them chiefs. They have two different sections: the Dene and Warrior Society. Then you have the blacks used to have the Mau Maus, but they don't have that anymore. So now they don't really, they kind of, just click up with each other by whatever gang or hood. It used to be not like that. Now it's not structured. So all the other races have really tough militant style structure. We have, then the Mexicans have the raza, and then we have the wood pile. We call them woods. We're an extension of the AB.
Right.
Only a select few will ever become an actual, in Arizona, only a select few will ever become an Aryan brother. Right. The woods, we're like foot soldiers. And I got to make this clear because a lot of people get it mixed up. Woods are not skinheads. We're different. We don't roll a certain way. I mean, we roll it a certain way. We don't roll the same way. The best way that I can put it, that my big homie told me to look at it like, because I asked him not too long ago, I asked him, I'm like, yo, like, I'm having to explain all the time the difference. How can I do that easily? He said, just tell people skinheads hate to hate. You know what I mean? So
right.
Do we have, stringent, like, real tough rules? Yes. I'm not allowed, and you don't have to be black. If you're a Native American or Mexican, I wasn't allowed to take open food.
Right.
You know what I mean? I would get in trouble for that. We have to sit when we eat. Everybody has their own tables. The whites, Mexicans, the blacks, and the chiefs. Everybody's tables are split up. You sit with your own race. It's mandatory. You don't have a choice. You don't get to just go into this new world and say, I'm independent. There's no such thing.
Right.
Now, can you say, I don't want to put in work? Of course. But if a riot pops off or something happens, you're still expected to ride. But they're not going to walk up to you and go, hey, here's a banger. Go and hit that dude over there. Go and stab that dude over there. You know, a banger, for people that don't know, is a shank, a knife. That's just what we call them. Nobody really calls them shanks anymore. I think that's like a 30-year-old type term.
Right. Definitely, bro. But
You know what I mean?
not to cut you off, man. I definitely
Yeah, you're
appreciate
good.
you for sharing that, man. And I definitely appreciate you for giving your true definition of what a wood is, you know what I mean? And my interpretation of what a wood, it kind of ties in exactly to what you said before you gave your description. Like the fact that you said it's like an extension of the AB or whatever, but like only a certain few would be that. So that kind of I mean, like makes me think, like, I have seen a lot of people, a lot of when I think of a wood, like I do see, like, big tough white guys, in prison or whatever, that may or may not have these these AB tattoos or these other racist tattoos that just call it what it is, whatever. But at the
Right.
same time, those same individuals, they may or may not be completely against interacting with other races or whatever. It's more like they're not necessarily to say going with the program, but they're who they are and they're running who they're running with, but it's not necessarily to be like you said, one of the selected few or whatever.
Right.
If I'm kind of making sense of
Yeah.
of how I'm interpreting or whatever. So,
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. Because you earn certain types of ink in there.
right.
So okay, so like if a skinhead, if he gets a swastika tattooed on him, they can just do that. They don't
Right.
gotta earn anything.
Yeah.
Certain different factors in other states might have to earn their swastika for a skinhead. But generally, as far as I know, I don't want to speak too far out on it because I'm not 100% sure. So I don't want to say something wrong and be wrong about that, because I don't know how skinheads roll. I don't know their inner workings. I don't care for their shit. You know what I mean?
Right.
If they get that, sometimes I know in other states it can mean that they kill somebody of another race.
Right.
If a wood gets a swastika, it has nothing to do with that. Or the SS bolts.
Right.
I can't really say too much on how they get that, because then that puts me in a jam.
Oh yeah, I definitely don't want you to do that. It's other documents that people can Google to find out that, you know what I mean? So
Yeah. Well, we don't earn that. You're not allowed to stab another race. Doesn't work that way.
right.
You know what I mean? Like, if it comes down to that, every race has to handle it in-house. Meaning, for other people that don't know, they have to handle that. If I have an issue, and this goes for the higher yards you get on, the higher yard you make it to, the more politics you got to follow, the more strict it is.
Right.
You earn those tattoos by doing, certain things. that has nothing to do with race.
Right.
It's more of a sign of like, yeah, that dude will get you.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's they mean different stuff. It has nothing, what I'm trying to get at is it has nothing to do with, being racist. I know dudes that got bolts and swazis on them that they earn by killing, it's by, putting in work on our own people.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I know those dudes that got those that are listening to rap in themselves.
Right.
Are we allowed to do that publicly? No. You can do it on your headphones, on a higher custody yard. You can do it on your headphones, but you can't
Right.
be out, can't. And I grew up my whole life listening to rap my whole life. My number one favorite artist is Method Man. It has been since 92, 93.
I heard that.
My first cassette tape was part 2, Tupac, All Eyes on Me. Then my second one was Criss Cross, Totally Crossed Out. So it was different for me to have to watch how I talk, speak. I wasn't allowed to do certain things like, I couldn't play cards with another race against my own race.
Right.
I got talked to for that. I got talked to because when I first got there, I was playing dominoes and I slammed dominoes. Boom. 3s and 6s with 2 bad bitches. Blah. You know what I mean? I got in trouble. I'm not in trouble. I got talked to for that. Because it's technically not like the white thing to do, they say. You know what I mean?
Right.
So there's certain things and guidelines that I had to follow, but people knew too. I let people know off top, like, hey, I don't get down with the Hail Hitlers. I don't get down like that. I don't do that. But I will respect and follow the rules because this is your house. You know what I mean? I'm just here visiting. I'm only here for a few years. This isn't my permanent residence. So yeah.
Definitely, man. I definitely like I said, bro, like everything that you've shared with me and my viewers, man, is definitely informative, man. Just the whole journey, man. And like I said, man, a lot of people have been through a similar journey and may not, feel comfortable sharing it. So the fact that you're sharing it here, I'm hoping that that can help somebody else that may not be comfortable with sharing, because like I said, man, like it's the similarities. Like we have differences, like we have them, but we have more similarities than difference, man. And I think in all situations, the good definitely outweighs the bad. So
Yeah.
with everything that you laid out for us, man, I definitely think if we're gonna say good and bad, we can definitely say this has been the rough part, the bad part. So I kind of want to switch gears, man, and and let my viewers know, like I said, you definitely have a upcoming celebrity fight, and I want to dig into that as well as talk about how you became a successful YouTuber. But I want to do that on part 2. So I'm gonna need my viewers to hit like on this video, leave a comment, let me know what y'all think, man. And part 2 will definitely be on the way for you guys real soon. It's been another edition of More to Live For, the voice of the North. Shout out to the homie AZ, Arizona, definitely in the building, man. It's been a good one, man. Y'all stay tuned for part 2.